Yeah, I haven't made a video in a week or so, and the reason for that is because the events which have been unfolding in terms of the escalation of troops in this war in Afghanistan was entirely predictable. So, what can I say? There was a dissenting essay, actually, on the Daily Coast site the other day. It was a recommended diary, in fact, but it got quickly demolished by this faction on the Daily Coast site of the firm believers that Obama can do no wrong. It's a sad thing to see, but also entirely predictable. So I would like to point out this particular essay because it does represent a dissent within the Democratic Party, I suppose. I'm no longer a part of it because I have come to the conclusion that both parties are essentially, in all major aspects, are touting the corporate line. They're in the service of the global elite, and basically both parties really don't give a shit what is going on within their own populations. But that's just my assessment at this point. But let me read you at least a little part of this essay, which is, although I think this poster was still somehow praising Obama, he did have some good points to make, which all independent thinkers at this point, and especially people who are still thinking that Obama can do no wrong, should listen to. It always sort of amazes me that people can think of war strictly in terms of its political implications, as if the ugly reality of war can be subordinate to the politics of it. Apparently there is nothing worse in the political realm than being seen as soft on defense. The innocent babies that will be burned alive to avoid such a taint notwithstanding. My God, what would the Republicans think if we stood firmly for peace? The conventional wisdom is that we cannot politically afford to spare the victims of our mindless military machine. And people just won't support us if we go all soft. Now, this is the Democrats speaking. These people who go the middle of the road, so to speak. I think there is something very wrong with us, all of us, when we allow our politics to drive us into doing evil, waging war when you don't have to wage war. To wage war is to admit that you are too mean or too stupid to avoid it. At the end of the disaster that we call Vietnam, me and many of my peers believed, it would be a long time before we would ever be stupid enough to repeat those mistakes. As it turns out, it wasn't nearly long enough. It seems people forget all history all too quickly. The concept of war itself had been thoroughly discredited, but over time the neocons and the global elites managed to rehabilitate it. By 2001, if not sooner, we had forgotten enough of the lessons of Vietnam to once again think of war as not always such a bad thing. And that, dear friends, is a pity beyond measure. The only lessons learned from Vietnam were not to have a draft and to not show the dead, the injuries, the absolute horror of war on daily television when you come home from work. That much has been learned. Out of sight, out of mind. And yeah, I know, Afghanistan is not Vietnam, but invading and occupying a wild and rugged land while bullying its people with force of arms into basically exchanging their ancient way of life for a new one, for our new one, our so-called democracies and freedoms. It's really not all that different. Occupying armies, are just not that popular, whatever the country or culture. Slaughtering innocent people while propping up a corrupt government at the same time didn't work in Vietnam, and it won't work in Afghanistan or elsewhere in the long run. I'll post a link to this essay. As much as people have hoped for great leadership from Obama, my greatest fears about that have come to pass. He told some huge fucking whoppers on Tuesday night. How do you look someone in the eye and say, we do not seek to occupy other nations, when you are ordering 30,000 more troops into their country? And what about this one? Although a legitimate government was elected by the Afghan people, it has been hampered by corruption, the drug trade, an underdeveloped economy, and insufficient security forces. A legitimate government was elected? How does a government fraudulently elected become legitimate in the first place? By American proclamation? I'll go on to part 2 of this video.